All right, welcome back, everybody, to the 14th week of our Python session. If you are joining us from our Intro to Programming course, welcome back to the 6th week of our Intro to Programming course, all covered with our Tech Bytes program. As always, glad to have you guys here with us, and we'll be picking off where we left off last week. That being, keep on working on our new project, which was introduced to us last week about the tic-tac-toe, while also learning about a new fact and having some fun along the way. As always, guys, thanks for being here. And without any further ado, let's get to it. In case you guys don't already know who I am, guys, my name is Rayon Siddiqui. I am a senior at James B. Cohen High School. Just like many of you guys, I am also partaking in virtual learning. I have made multiple apps for the App Store and a dozen different websites, and I'm now really looking towards the content creation side in the terms of making my own YouTube videos for a tech channel, writing a talk show called Buzzer to Buzzer with some of my friends, and writing some articles on the side. As always, if you want to learn more about me, you're always more than free to check out my website at rayonsiddiqui.com. And as we are making our way into today, glad to see more people are joining. Looking, we have pushed back our time, which is great. So if you have any other friends or family members who are looking to learn and take a step into this world of computer programming, definitely tell them about our Tech Bytes program. And it's awesome to see more people here today. But guys, let's get down to our agenda for today. That being that we're going to get started off with our daily fun fact. Moving on, talking about just recapping what we talked about last time, essentially, about our new project, that being the tic-tac-toe project. Then we're going to learn a new concept, which we sort of learned about last week, and just recap the code from last week as well. And then we're going to continue where we left off, essentially start coding and make more of our tic-tac-toe project. So let's get to it. Firstly, let's get to our first item on our agenda, that being our cool Python fun fact of the day. That fun fact being, we can use the programming language which we are studying of Python to place orders from Amazon. Let's dissect that like we always do, right? So we're saying that we can use the language of Python to place an order from Amazon. Now, if you do not know what Amazon is, basically Amazon is a pretty big monopoly now in a sense, right? They are huge. They're a huge online e-commerce website where you can purchase everything from daily items like maybe toilet paper, maybe some toys, whatever the case might be, all the way to you can order groceries. And essentially, using the language of Python, we can place orders from Amazon. Wait, how is that possible? Well, I'll give you guys a hint. If you've been keeping up from our with our Tech Bytes programs, the idea is a bit similar to some of our other facts of how we can do these crazy things. And that being, essentially, we got to use an API. Now, with this Intro to Programming course, we've talked various times about what an API is. And a quick refresher if you are new, basically an API is an application programming interface. And the main purpose of why we use an API is, well, it makes our lives easier in the sense that we are able to do cool things such as place orders from Amazon or some of the various other things we've learned about in the past as well, such as ordering a pizza from Domino's, all because of a thing called an API, which has pre-written functions, pre-written methods, which allow us to make certain commands and execute those commands, and ultimately allowing us to do cool things like this. So specifically today with our Amazon example, essentially, we just need an API and some credentials. So what do I mean by those credentials? Well, there's usually, if you have already created an account for Amazon, which you have to place an order, in the settings, if you go deep dive into your account, I'm not recommend going to your parents' account and deep diving for this information, by the way, but it is pretty cool to check out. If you go to one of the tabs in our account area, there is a key which is provided for people like us who want to be cool and place an order from Python. And basically, using that key, we can pass that key in as a parameter into our API when making a request to place an order. And that key is going to act as essentially a secret key, which is going to encrypt our purchase. And once we have that key, we are able to place orders on Amazon. So once we have our key along with our username and password, and once we have stored them in a variable, That variable will then be passed into a function as a parameter. We learned about parameters, right? How we're able to pass in values into functions. And once all the fields which are necessary have been filled out, such as not only the username and password, but like what items do we want to order? Do we want to order everything in our cart? Do we just want to order one specific thing? Do we want to order a specific item with a specific SKU number? Basically, an SKU number is a number which identifies an item on Amazon. So once we have all of those fields sorted out, stored in a variable, passed in as a parameter, we can successfully just hit the run button, and voila, we will be able to successfully place an order on Amazon. And that just goes to show us one more time, guys, how the reach of the language which we are studying today in our Intro to Programming course, Python, and also likewise our web development language of JavaScript have unlimited capabilities, whether it be placing an order on Amazon, to ordering a pizza from Domino's, to controlling a Tesla car. There are a bunch of cool real world applications which can transpire from what we're learning. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that little cool fact for today as well. All right. So now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about our new project. Now, last week we did make a good start. We started laying out that foundation, making our way towards what we're making. And essentially, if you were not here last week, what we're making is a tic-tac-toe game. And if you've not played tic-tac-toe, we'll do a quick example as always. But the basic idea is that we're going to make a 2-player game in which it's going to be a 3x3 grid, like the picture below, in which one user takes a turn, one at a time, placing either an X mark or a circle mark. And then your goal is to get either 3 across, 3 down, or 3 in a diagonal to win. And the core concepts, guys, which we will be focusing on with our tic-tac-toe project is similar to the core concepts which we're focusing on in our calculator project in web development. That being that we're looking towards variables, looking at functions, looking at loops, parameters, and user input is going to be a very big key as well. So hopefully with that idea down, let's get towards what we will be doing today. Now, before we get right there, I just want to talk about what we did do last week in case you're coming from there. Last week, we did start learning about what the Tic-Tac-Toe project was all about, and we learned about a concept called dictionaries. Now, dictionaries were what allowed us to create our board, which I'll show in a little bit. Don't worry, don't get too confused or worried if you do not know what I'm talking about. I'll load up our fiddle where we can all code as well. But for today, we're going to do a quick recap, make sure we're all on the same page, and then we're going to get started by working on some other functions. Because last week, we only got the nice part of the game working, in the sense that we got the deployment of the game. However, this week, we're going to get started by adding some more of the logic phase, in the sense that we're going to start asking the user, hey, where do you want to place a circle or an X mark? And then we're going to eventually get to the part today where we are going to identify whether a spot is able to be taken. So basically, if a spot is open, then the user can only place their marker. Instead, if a spot is already taken, you can't go over somebody else's mark, right? That makes no sense. So that is something which we will be tuning into today. So without any further ado, guys, how about... Sorry about that. Now, how about we open up our coding website and get to it? As always, I will be dropping the link to our online environment in the chat for you guys to follow along. Otherwise, you can always find it in our Google Classroom. The link is posted weekly with any updates of the code we go through. The link is available now in the chat, and I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to get on while I open my link as well. Oh, what do you know? Today's Teacher's Day. Happy Teacher's Day. All right, I have made my way on over. Hopefully you are finding your way over as well. In case you were confused as to where can I find this link on the Google Classroom, as always, guys, head on over to our tab of classwork, go down to the Python material section, and click the week 14 recap, and the link will be there as the tic-tac-toe link. Just to confirm, everybody who is here today has joined our Google Classroom, correct? I know we have some new people here today. If not, I can give you guys the code. All right, I guess we are all good then. Cindy has a question of how we can join. Yeah, sure. Cindy, it's super simple. Basically, all you need is a Google account. So if you have one from your parents, or maybe you have one from yourself, basically, you just need a Google account, log in, head on over to googleclassroom.com. You'll arrive on a page which is going to ask you for a code. And that code is this. I will drop the code in the chat as well. There you go. And basically, all you got to do is enter that code, your name, email, and you'll be in the classroom. And you can access all the resources I've put up. Let me know if that helps you. Yeah. No problem. Hope to see you soon in the classroom, man. So let's get back towards our online environment. For now, Sindhu, if you just want to hop on the link I threw in the chat, that is perfect for now as well. But if you want to get started with the classroom process, that is fine as well. All right. So hopefully you are now on the website. And to start off, guys, how about I just hit the run button and see what we had working last week. If I run, we see a pretty... Oh, yeah, that's the board for tic-tac-toe, right? If I go to a website to show the game... Here we go. We see that the board we have made is pretty similar, and it resembles an actual tic-tac-toe board in the sense we got a 3x3 grid. And eventually, our goal is to get towards the point where we can have a two-player game in which we are able to drop markers. But that's not going to completely be finished for a couple of weeks. So right now, we're just going to keep on building the fundamentals and eventually get there soon. So as you guys can see, how were we able to accomplish this last week? How are we able to print out a board in this format? Well, remember that idea of dictionaries, which we spent a whole bunch of time last week in our last session? Well, using that idea, dictionaries, guys, remember, they are very useful in this program because they make our lives easier. And essentially, we are able to tell the computer where we want to place our marker through a dictionary. And if you can see, we have a 3x3 dictionary set up with 9 different spots. Now, what do those 9 different spots signify? Well, if I draw a quick 3x3 grid right here, make it a bit larger, you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 possible squares where we can drop a marker, like an X. When I refer to markers, I'm referring to an X or a circle mark. So with those 9 markers, we want to represent each space as this individual property, essentially. So this bottom left is the first key. This is the second key, the third key, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, and the ninth. And as you guys can see, that's what I'm emulating right here. We have 1 through 9 keys set up, which are blank right now. So if you take a look, we have the keys. The keys are, remember, the values before the colon. They are set equal to a value which is null. Essentially, they're just holding an empty string. They're like a blank set of quotes, essentially, right? Well, that's because there's supposed to be nothing inside of them. This is just the start of the game. We do not have any moves already filled up, so we just got to wait and see where the user places their moves. And as always, guys, as I am going through this, if you ever have any questions, ever feel like I'm going too fast, you can always ask me a question in the chat or communicate it through the classroom as well. But seeing that there are no questions as of right now, how about we get started with this week's major concept and code? That being working towards asking the user for an input and populating our board. So let's get to that part. All right, so what I'm going to do. All right, I just saw somebody fork it. That's awesome. Somebody just is following along, which is awesome to see. So guys, basically what we can do, I'm gonna indent down here. And our goal for today, as I mentioned, is that we want to ask the user for that input. Now, how about we first create a method or a function to hold that piece of code? So what I'm gonna do is just do def start official game. Call that. You can call your function whatever you would like such. Once you have that, one thing which I'm going to do is that I'm going to delete this line of code where we are printing out our board, because we're going to be printing it out at specific instances of time once we get the game rolling. And what I'm going to do before we ask the user for some input, asking where do you want to place your move, I'm going to firstly create a variable called turn and set that equal initially to the X marker. This is going to represent what type of move you have, whether you are X or a circle, right? And once we have that, I'm going to also declare another variable called the counter and set that equal to 0 as well. And if you guys are getting these red squiggly lines, do not worry. They are just there now because essentially our environment is telling us that they're unused. So no need to panic right now. Once we have that, guys, now we get into some logic in which we're going to be asking the user for an input. However, we're gonna have to ask the user repeatedly for this input. So if I pull up that website again, there we go. So if we notice, this website essentially is sort of, although it's not explicitly saying, hey, X, you go, circle, you go, it's implicitly telling us, meaning it's implying you should do that move. So it's first telling X, you go. Make that two-player. X, you go. Then circle. Then X. Then circle. Then X. There is a pattern, right? First X, then circle. You're switching off, essentially. Well, we want to emulate that similar idea. And how we're going to do that is, if you guess the right concept, we're going to be using some for loops. Now, we have to think about how many times will our for loop be running. We can't just run it an infinite number of times, because remember, if we're going to be writing a for loop, we need to essentially specify a certain number of times the for loop has to run. So how about we think about how many times will this for loop run? Well, how many times can both users make a move? Say the game ends in a catch game, essentially in a draw or a tie. Keep going, keep going. Oh, that was not a tie. So say I purposefully go for a tie. Oh. So if I hopefully can get a tie, there we go. How many moves were made in that sequence? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, aka 3 by 3. 9 moves were possible to be made. So that means that the amount of times which we're going to specify for our for loop to execute is going to be 10 times, because it can't run 9 times. I'm sorry. It can't run more than 9, or it could run less than 9 if a user is able to pull off a 3 diagonal, 3 down, or 3 across. So with that idea in mind, we can specify the number 9. Add that colon, tab over, indent. And now here, we can start asking the user for some input. So basically what we're going to do before, guys, we ask the input is firstly print out our board. So remember, our board is being represented with that dictionary. And then one thing which I am going to change to make sure is going to call a function. So one second. So now if I, all right, there we go. All right. So let you guys catch up there. So if we go down and hit, we write our function name, start official game at the bottom, like such, and hit the run button, we see that our board is printed out, but in a sort of weird fashion, right? It's a bit weird. Why is it printing it out in a dictionary style? That's not how we're looking for it, right? Well, what I'm going to do then is go back to our idea of using this function, which we coded last week. Remember, this function is essentially going to make our board look nice. So if we already have that, why not use that to our advantage? So what I'm going to do is call the print board function and pass in our dictionary as the parameter. Hit run. Oh, we see our board nicely formatted, but it's printed out 9 times right now. That because we haven't actually stopped our for loop running. So if I comment out the for loop, we'll see it only being printed out. Go back 1 space, print it out 1 time, like such. But you don't have to follow that part, just showing that for visual purposes. And now, guys, we can start asking the user for some input. So what I'm going to do essentially is print out first, or actually we can assume in 1 line. So what I'm going to do is do user input, a variable, which is going to hold the user's X or wherever their X or circle marker goes, and ask the user for some input. So I'm going to say specify which position 1 through 9. Remember, because that's where the values of our dictionary keys range from. So 1 through 9. You would like to place your and I'm going to change the turn variable to marker. I think that just grammatically makes more sense. Your marker at. So now if I hit the run button, oh, and we are getting an error. Let's see what this is about. Let's see, what's the error? Okay, so it seems like that we are getting an error because we are essentially splitting off our string. We're telling the user, hey, place your marker, making it a bit personalized. So what we're gonna do instead, and essentially debug live, is what I'm gonna do is print out, please make a move 1 through 9 with your, and then I'm gonna add their marker. And then essentially we can just empty this, like empty our input statement and hit run. And now we can see our computer is asking us, please make a move 1 through 9 with your marker and then whatever their marker is. So in this case, we're starting off with the letter X. And then what we can do if we want to make this look nicer is just in these input, add some quotes and say enter move position. And then this will clearly tell us where we got to make our move. And now if you noticed, our board is not being printed out 9 separate times. Well, that's because our computer is waiting for us to enter a move. So if I enter a move, we see that it keeps on running, and this is going to run 9 separate times. So hit stop right there. Now, once we have asked the user for their move, we gotta act on that, right? So say the user tells us, hey, I want to place the X marker at the first position. In our programming case, that's going to mean that we're going to fill the empty value at the key 1 equal to the X marker. So how do we do that? Well, firstly, we got to make sure that the spot is even able to be moved in. So what I'm going to do is use some logic if statements. So if the board dictionary, or whatever you call your dictionary variable, at the user input, and we're going to make that an integer, whatever the user inputted, like such. And if that is equal to an empty position like such, then we know we have the clearance to make a move right there. Now, this is a pretty long piece of line of code, guys, right here. Essentially, remember, we're just checking if a spot in our dictionary is open. And the reason why we are checking with and converting our user input to an integer is because we're not comparing apples to oranges, right? Comparing oranges to oranges in a sense. So we want to check if, say, the first position has an empty value. And then if it is empty, what we can do is essentially fill that spot with the user's marker. So we're going to say board dictionary at that spot is equal to the user's marker, like such. And now, guys, since we are using some logic here, there's a reason why I'm using an if statement right here. We're checking firstly to see if a spot is open. Well, what if a spot is not open? Well, we got to use an else statement. So what I'm going to do is backtrack like this, do else, colon, and then we can just tell our user, hey, please make a valid move at an open position, like such. And now, guys, if I print out my board, what we can do to see if our code is actually working, what I'm going to do is call our print board method. So, oh, we are decoding it. So if I hit run now, there we go. What I'm going to do is actually refresh just to clear our output box. Come on. There we go. And now if I hit the run button, guys, we see we have an empty board initially. Say I want to make a move at the 1 position. We get an error. Let's see. Okay. So our error is telling us this line of code is not valid. So how about we do something like this? Take away those int markers. And there we go. Okay, guys. So it looks like that in this case, oops. There we go. In this case, guys, we do not have to convert our user input to an integer. It seems like that since we are already inputting a number, that being a number 1 through 9, we are able to check automatically if our spot is open. So what we can do is take away that int statement. And using this same piece of logic, guys, we're going to make the rest of our game alternating between the users who are making their moves. Give everybody a quick minute to catch up, clean up their code as well. All right. So now, guys, since we have the first user able to make a move, we got to think about the partner, aka the second player. When is it going to be their turn? Because right now, we are never switching it up. In a sense, we're never saying, okay, since your turn elapsed, X player, it's circle player's turn. Well, to do that, we got to use another logic if statement. So what I'm going to do is go back inside of the for loop and write an if statement checking if the current user is the X player, switch it over to the circle player and vice versa. So what I'm going to do is do if the marker equals the X player, the marker is going to equal the circle player. And then the opposite is true as well. Else, we know that the marker is going to be equal to the X player. And now, guys, if I hit the run button, stop, run, first player, say they want to go right in the middle. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to say the 5th position. There we go. And now say the circle player wants to go at the 1st position. They hit the 1st, and voila. We can see how the X and circle are both able to make their moves. and they're able to make their moves at whatever position they signified using that concept of a dictionary, in which we are populating our area where we want to make our move. Now, guys, remember, if you are confused, why are we inputting numbers to where we want to make a move? Well, we can't directly tell the computer, hey, put me right in the middle. But what we can tell the computer is a specific index or a specific location. And that's what we accomplished today with that. And with that piece finished, guys, we have a lot of code which we have to do right here in the middle. And you might be asking, what's that code left? Well, although we have the board working, the user inputs now working, in which both players are able to switch back and forth, there's something we still have to do. That being check for winners, right? We got to check if a 3 down occurred, a 3 across, or a 3 diagonal. Well, that is something which is going to be our main focus next week, in which we're going to be using multiple logic if-else statements and checking specific areas to see if a winning scenario occurred. So that is going to be it for our additions to our tic-tac-toe project for today. And if you guessed it, next week what we're going to be doing is keep on continuing with our tic-tac-toe project. Keep working where we left off. At this point, as I mentioned, we have about almost halfway done of our game, if not more. And next week is going to be the home stretch, in which we're going to be working on a lot of the logic statements, adding a scenario to check whether if a user won, if both users maybe even tied. And then we can get towards adding some of the more niceties stuff, such as a reset option, some more personalization, but all of that good stuff will come with time. As always, I hope you guys had a great time today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the fun fact. Be sure to spread the word about our Tech Bytes program. Hopefully you had a fun time, and maybe you want to tell your friends and family members. Always the more, the merrier. If you have any questions, stick around. You can always join the Google Classroom and communicate through me through that medium as well. But guys, take care, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See you guys.